Ladies and gentlemen, let's get ready to crumble!
I'm Joshua Kemble, and welcome to Joshua Kemble's Livestream. I've been a freelance illustrator and graphic designer for over 20 years. I was an art director for 9 years. And when I'm not art directing and working on illustrations and graphic designs, I'm working on comic books and graphic novels, and that's usually what I do during my streams. And while conversations can go all over the place on this stream, from spicy and entertaining to goofy and silly, one thing stays consistent throughout every stream. I'll always be working on art. So pull up a chair, get your art supplies out, and get ready for an entertaining show that'll keep you company while you work on your own personal art projects. This is Joshua Kemble's Art Stream. All right, welcome to my 421st live stream. You might notice a crazy gunfight going on in the background, just as a heads up. My son and my nephew are playing guns in the background, which is pretty fun. So you might see them running back and forth. If you see a crazy gunfight behind me, just understand that it's just it's not real. It's just toy guns, kids running around. But just so you know, there might be wild action movies occurring behind me. All right, so what are we doing today? I have it labeled as a chill art stream. Basically, what we're going to do is work on comics. And I started coloring page, let's see, 157, just a little bit, and we're going to kind of continue. And during this stream, I really want to rock some flat colors. Dylan said, "Hi, Joshua." Hi, Dylan. He said, "I was just starting your latest live stream to watch, but I decided to check if you were going live, and ta-da, you were here within the next minute." Yes, so what we're going to do is basically finish coloring page 157. I think on the last live stream, we shaded the whole page and then went ahead and left to have food. And this time, during this very live stream, oh, hey, Jim. Jim's joining us as well. And I should show the comments. Boom. I like doing that. Hopefully those will show. I don't know if those will show. Anyhow, so what we're going to do during this one is I actually ate dinner beforehand. Believe it or not, I actually ate dinner beforehand. So that means that that basically I'll be able to just totally finish coloring the page. So I watched more videos on the particular PRS SE model while I was working. Jim was saying new internet's working fine. That's good news. Yeah, I'm really excited about it. It's been years. Like I think I mentioned this on the last stream, but I am not a big fan of Spectrum as a company, and so not paying them has made me very happy. It was worth the half a day it took to cancel the service. And go with this new service provider who's got fiber optic. So I'm pretty excited about that. Dylan said, "I had cleaners here today, so that's why I wasn't available for your earlier live." That's okay. You don't have to be available for an earlier live. So that's good. But you know, I'm kind of curious about this cleaners thing. That just sounds pretty cool. And you were saying it's kind of affordable? You'll have to let me know, Dylan. What's everybody else up to before we get into the coloring of pages and stuff? I'm having some coffee. I don't know if it was made clear that I was having coffee with the drink that I am drinking that says coffee on it. That might have been a giveaway. I don't know if I've told you guys, but I really like the Eb Iwerks era of Mickey Mouse a lot. I grew up watching those cartoons because my dad was like a Disney nerd. And those original black and whites are just amazing. I would put Plain Crazy in like my top something cartoons. It's just what Ib was doing was pretty amazing. Or Ub. I always forget if it's Ub or Ib, but anyhow. Brilliant stuff. So any of this stuff that kind of pulls from like an older school Mickey, this is kind of more the new model of, the new cartooning model. But I liked the design of this coffee mug. So the last time, ages ago, when we were able to afford the land of Disney, we checked that out. I probably shouldn't say that name too many times. I bet if you say it's like Voldemort, or not Voldemort. What's the guy where Beetlejuice? You say Disney 3 times and you get a lawsuit, even if you're not. You're just literally streaming. They're like, you cannot say our name. But anyhow, so Dylan said, yeah, it's affordable. It's actually free due to her getting donation money for her cleaning charity that she's in the process of making. That's cool. I just think that's rad. Yeah. But I was just thinking, man, cleaning lady sounds nice. I told you I'm sure I've mentioned this on stream, but I'll tell a story again. So I have a really good friend. He's probably the wealthiest friend of my original friend group. Oh, wait a minute. You don't want to just stare at my face. Hold on. One more sip of coffee and then we'll get to art. And remind me in chat to there we go. And remind me in chat to make sure to tell you guys the story. I guess you don't have to remind me because I'm already here. But I'm going to tell you the story of a wealth divide story. So I have a really good friend growing up, probably one of the wealthiest guys in my friend group, like that, that succeeded financially quite heavily in life. Anyhow, so he lives in like, oh my gosh, I always blank out on what it's called. I think it's called like Half Moon Bay in Northern California. And I remember one time, this is related to the previous thing where I was rambling about. Yeah, that's true. Jim said, your second most wealthy friend. That's true. Jim is a multimillionaire. I don't know if you guys have seen Luhan's net worth online, but which the internet never lies at all. So it's definitely true that Jim is a multimillionaire. Anyhow, so this is like a long time ago, but it's like when I first got flashback to when I first got my first Fender guitar, which was a big deal for me. Growing up, I had wanted an actual Fender guitar, and to be able to get an American made Telecaster was just unbelievable. It was a big thing off the bucket list of things that I would like to have had. It was fulfilling, a nerdy kid in me. And I remember calling my buddy to just kind of talk about it. I was like, dude, you won't believe what I got. And then we started talking about guitars and stuff like that, because he plays guitar too, and he's a big fan of guitars and stuff like that. And we're just chatting, and it just feels like old times. And then at one point he pans back to show his room with guitars, and each guitar is like my college tuition. There's 12 guitars, and it's you could pay for college with one of those guitars. It's insane. And I'm like, okay, there's a slight wealth difference between us. And then what hit me the most though was his guitar room is has floor to ceiling windows that you can see the ocean from, and I was like, okay, we're in different worlds. So that was one of those moments of like, oh, okay, there is like a slight difference in like wealth and what it gets you in life. Anyhow, um, I haven't had these moments very often, but I find them funny because because I've known the guy forever. It's like, we're kind of peers, and it's just weird, like because we both grew up pretty poor, so it's like the stark differences of our net worths don't always. I'm not a guy who's like constantly looking for differences, but that was definitely one of those ones of like, okay. I got a new guitar. You got 12 new guitars, like that are that are worth 50 of my guitars. Anyhow, so another time again, because we're really close friends. He's not a guy who like hoards his wealth or is like snobby about it or anything. He's a great guy and he's earned every penny of it. And literally, like, since I've known him, I mean, he started out like literally in a you know in like a mobile home, right? As a kid, and then like he kind of worked his way out of living at a mobile home in like out in the middle of nowhere to like having a really good salary and stuff. So I'm proud of the guy. But anyhow, the big wealth disparity. I'm getting to a better story here. The big wealth disparity moment was this one time he called me up saying, and I've probably told this story before, but it's funny. He called me up saying, hey, like, because we both have kids around the same age. Like, his son's about the same age. He's about a year younger than Ben. And he's like, hey, could you talk to my son about, like, graphic novels? Because he's, like, getting really interested in them. And so I talked to his kid for a little bit about, comics and graphic novels and stuff like that. And then, and then after I talked to his kid, he's like, yeah, it's funny. We haven't talked in a while. And I remembered to talk to you because our au pair was cleaning my son's room and came across Mr. Punch, the graphic novel by Dave McKeon. And he's like, it reminded me of when we were in high school and you turned me on to Mr. Punch. Like, and it just got me thinking about you. And then my son was asking a question about graphic novels and stuff. And I was like, oh, cool. And then I actually, like, this is, I guess, one of those funny things, but it's like, it actually took me a second because I had to look up what an au pair was. I was like, what's an au pair? Like, I don't know what an au pair is. So then I remember looking up an au pair, and then I teased him a little bit because it was just like so bizarre. I guess an au pair is like somebody who's basically like a live-in nanny. And I was like, do you have a butler? Like, it's just so funny. I don't know. To me, that's funny. That was like a weird divide where I was like, okay, some people are in different worlds, Now, don't get me wrong. Like, again, that guy's earned every penny he has. There's no ill will there. It was just funny, because I was just like, it hadn't dawned on me, like, oh, yeah, I guess if you're wealthy, like you'd have somebody who just kind of lives at your place and does all those things. That's bizarre. It's a different world, guys. Anyhow, so that was a funny story. But to me, the funniest part was like it's such an alien idea to me that I literally had to look it up. Like I just had never heard the term before. Dylan said keeping him humble. Well, the thing that's nice about him is he's just a good dude. I need to go up and visit him at some point. He's a really good dude. I don't want to like name drop him or anything because he's a nice guy and a great dude. But I should go up and hang out with him for a bit. It's been a minute. We used to be neighbors back when I was in college. When I lived in Huntington Beach for a little bit. We literally lived in apartments that were like right across from each other, and Yeah, I mean, you know, it's like one of those friendships. Yeah, yeah. Jim's like, don't you hate when you forget to restock the DOM on your Gulfstream? Oh man, that's great. Yeah. I'm trying to think of like a really expensive liquor, you know, where you could have like a conversation. Maybe you're just thinking about like it's just Jameson, and somebody's like, "Yeah, I hate it when I run out of Jameson," and you're like, "Yeah, that sucks," you know. And then they like are like, "Yeah," and then it's like you go to Costco and they don't even have Jameson Gold, and you're like, "Oh, okay, difference there." I think for whiskey, that's not like the highest shelf whiskey, but um, pretty fancy pants for my tastes. Uh, Dylan said, so it was like a Friends. Oh, Friends situation. I just realized you're talking about Friends, the show, living in the same building. Yeah, it was awesome. We lived across from each other for like a year or two, and it was great. A lot of good memories. That spot in Huntington was weird because we were both like broke, really broke, like broke as a joke back then, and so what we did was we lived in these like apartments in Huntington. They were really close to Beach Boulevard, which if you're familiar with Huntington Beach is like really like prime real estate. It was on like 13th and Orange. So because it was 13th or like we basically would be able to like walk to the beach from our apartment. But here's the thing: none of us could afford those apartments. So what we did was they were like 2-bedroom apartments, and we'd have like 6 roommates. Like everybody was splitting a bedroom, and then I think at one point we had a guy living in the living room. But we'd all split rent, you know, and that's how we afforded it. But it was a fun apartment. This is like way a little bit after my first apartment in Long Beach, and then before my next apartment in Long Beach. So it was like kind of, I mean, you guys don't know the timeline there, but yeah, it was pretty amazing because like, you know, these apartments at the time, I'm sure this isn't the case anymore, but they were great. They had like a garage attached to the apartment. So the way it worked was we were on like the second story. Our apartment was on the second story. The first story would be attached to the garage, and then the second story was like sitting on top of it, and that's where our apartment was. But then if you went out the window in our kitchen area, you would end up on the roof of the garage. And so everybody in that neighborhood used the roof of their garage like basically as if it was like a balcony. And so we would hang out on the roof of the garage with like, we even had barbecues up there. I'm sure this is like really unsafe, but we had like a barbecue grill out there. So we'd go out there, grill some burgers and like drink and hang out. And like everybody on that street, like, you know, did that. But it was cool because you'd have like this beautiful, like you could actually see the ocean a little bit from there and stuff. It was nuts. Couple other things from that apartment while I'm working on coloring. And then if you guys have any topics you want me to touch on or anything like that, let me know. Definitely let me know what you guys are working on too. But one of the funny things about that, couple things about that apartment, and if I've talked about these on stream, I'm sorry, you know. But I'll let you know. So couple things about that apartment that were hilarious. One of the things was they had like the tastiest sandwiches. There was like a liquor store deli, and it was like, I swear it was run by the mob. Like, the reason we think it was, and this was our theory at the time, we were like, I think that this is run by the mob because we would go to like this store to get these like sandwiches, right? And anytime you'd go in there, It's like a liquor store, and then there's like a little deli in the back. And these were like hero subs, like they were delicious. But you'd go to the back to like get your sandwich or whatever. And there was always like 10, like 6 to 10 Italian guys like sitting out on like a porch. Like they had like a makeshift, like, you know, kind of seating arrangement out there. And every time we'd walk in there, like, you know, like the guy who ran the store would be like, "Oh, hold on, boys." But like at the same time, like you'd walk past and they'd always be saying something like wild, where it'd be like, "And then I told him, you look at me that way again and you're not going to exist anymore." And then it'd be like, "Oh, here's a friend over here, but let me make you a sandwich." And you're like, "Whoa, this is crazy." The other thing is they didn't seem to get that much business for like being a liquor store that was like that close to the ocean. So we were always like, yeah, I think it's a front. Like, I think the whole store is like a front for like a mob meetup. This was like a long time ago. So anyhow, a lot of funny stories with those guys. You know, and then you'd go in there and you'd feel like really nervous, like making your order. You know, they'd be like, "What do you want on your bread?" And you're like, "I hope I don't say the wrong thing. They're gonna disappear me." You know. But anyhow, point being, they were cheap and they were good sandwiches, so we used to eat sandwiches over there all the time. And then the other thing that was interesting was there was a skateboarding English bulldog on our street too, who had been in a lot of like YouTube videos. And this is like so long ago that I think none of us really knew what YouTube was, but we were like, you know, the guy would be like, "Yeah, we do videos on YouTube," and we'd be like, "You what?" Like. Anyhow, so long ago, my living in Huntington experiences. I do remember, like, that was kind of weird. Living in Huntington was weird for me in a, like, culture shock kind of way, because I'm such, like, an LA County kid. And so it would be weird to kind of deal with, like, Orange County is just a different vibe. Like, Orange County people are a little different. And don't get me wrong, like, my wife is an Orange County person, so it's like, you know, they're not all bad. But she would vouch for this too, like, where, like, Orange County just has a lot of, like, frat bro types. Like, there's a lot of, like, fraternity vibes in Orange County. You know, and not like the Animal House kind of fraternities, like, you know, even worse fraternities than that. You know what I'm saying? But, yeah, and then there's just like a different swagger and like different slang and stuff like that. So I remember it being a bit strange. And then also because I'm a bit of a class warrior at the time, especially when I was younger, I felt a little weird because it was just like being around just tons of like rich kids. And so it was just a little awkward, you know, because it'd be like, I don't know what to talk about. These are a bunch of rich kids, you know. But yeah, but anyhow, so good times were had though at that place. But it was fun. It was fun. It was like living next to one of my closest friends. So like, you know, and we were in our very early 20s, and so it is nice if you're like having, you know, whatever, like relationship issues or, you know, whatever kind of weird thing you're going to have in your early 20s, to have like my close friend, like literally our doors were across from each other. So there was a lot of hanging out and, you know, yeah, so good times. Jim said, get to know Josh time. Which Star Wars character is most like you? Ooh, I gotta think about it. I mean, I'd love to say Han Solo, but probably not. You know, I mean, the one I'd want to be is Han Solo. Who doesn't want to be Han Solo? That's the coolest character in the original trilogy, you know? I'm gonna isolate it to the original trilogy, Jim, just to make it an easier thing for me to answer, because I don't know, I may not know enough of the modern stuff or myths or whatever of the modern ones to be like, oh, that character's just like me. But so I'm going to say, well, first I'm going to say, same question to you, Jim. Which Star Wars character is most like you? Hello, Gary. Gary just joined us. How's it going, buddy? Oh, Landon. How's it going, Landon? I just saw your question. Landon said, have you ever considered leaving Cali, or are you a lifer? So my wife and I lived in Portland, Oregon for like 4 years. I think it was about 4 years that we lived in Portland. 3 or 4. It's weird when you get older, like 3 years and 4 years doesn't make a big difference, but I do think it was like 4 years. Yeah, and we lived there, and it's like I think we both realized it's not for us. Like, it's just the weather really gets to you. If you're used to California, just not having access to sun is surprisingly, it's more impactful than I thought it would be. Because I always thought of myself as somebody who would like love living in an area that's always raining, and I am not that person anymore. So the point being, like, it got grating and kind of weird to live in Oregon. Mainly the weather, and then also, not being close to family was tough too. So I think from that experience, I think we realized we really like California. Like, California is just kind of perfect. It's the weather's great. Like, despite all its flaws and stuff, there's a reason it's expensive to live in California, because it's awesome, Yeah, you have great weather like the majority of the time. Even the area we're in a desert, but it's like it's still like, compared to other deserts, it's not. It doesn't get, well, no, it gets pretty hot. We have kind of a similar climate to. I relate a lot to my brothers and sisters who live in not my actual brothers and sisters, but my metaphorical brothers and sisters who live in Arizona. I think we have a lot of cultural overlap in like weather, and actually quite a bit in like just desert folk. But I will say I just like California more, so I don't intend or want to leave California. I always, every once in a while, will have a dream of like some place where you could. I mean, I think everybody who lives in California probably has this fantasy, but it turns out I think this is kind of anywhere you go would be a little different. But I have this fantasy of like living in, like, it would be fun to be able to, like, if there were a hypothetical place where we could start like a weird little art commune and just go off the grid and not have to, work ever again. Like, there's always that daydream where it's like, I bet there's a place where I could just buy, property and build my field of dreams and retire or whatever. But in reality, I don't think there's a place I'd rather be than California. Landon was saying, are there any places in California that aren't ridiculously expensive? I would say where I live used to be one of those places. But here's the thing, like, where I live is cheap for California, right? Like, it's like insanely, well, not so much now, but when we bought property it was. But it is still like one of the most affordable areas in LA County, at least. There's definitely some areas up north where, like, when you start getting into like, cow territory and like farmlands and stuff, where you can get property for cheap. But this is the thing, California cheap is not cheap. Like, California cheap is like any other state's expensive. Does that make sense?
The higher the amount of tax that they pay, the higher their royalties.
So that's just something to kind of keep in mind, that California cheap is other states expensive. So we're working on this, seeing what we can do to get these colors done. What do we got here? I feel like, oh yeah, Jim was saying me, Jabba the Pizza Hut. You feel like Jabba's the closest to you? Okay, I didn't answer the Star Wars question. 2,000 square foot house go for in your area, roughly decent house condition. This is the problem. I don't even know what the I don't even know what my square footage is in the house I'm in, you know? Like I have no idea what the square footage is. I have a brain problem of like figuring out square feet. I would say like whatever an average kind of house size is. You know, like the house I live in or whatever. You know, it's like let's see. We got a 3-bedroom, 2-bath. And you know, nowadays it'd probably go for about 500, you know, which is cheap for California, like 500,000. That's like insanely cheap for California. Now, when we bought it, it was valued like at like 200 or something, which was even at the time like unthinkable in California. And it's a really safe neighborhood, all that kind of stuff. So, you know, that's probably that's pretty low in cost for California, from what I understand. And we have a big backyard and stuff like that. So our backyard, though, is a mess. Like, we got to clean it up because it's just a lot of dirt. But, you know, hopefully with, like, more time, we can kind of get into that. So you're going to hear a little bit of movie in the background. The boys stopped playing guns and are now watching, I think, Jurassic Park or something, the TV series. Let me see if I can. So I set the reduction in background noise, so hopefully that kind of, you know, helps you guys if you're hearing too much in the background. So Star Wars characters that I'm really into, or I feel a connection to, like would represent me. Oh, by the way, in chats, everybody let me know what's your Star Wars character. If you were a character in Star Wars, who would you be? And don't say the one you'd want to be. Say the one you feel like you are. I would say I'm C-3PO. And if we're sticking with original trilogy, I'm probably more than anyone. I'm probably more similar to C-3PO. I'd like to be the Han Solo type, but in reality, I'm more of a C-3PO, where I'm kind of a complainer and like I'm a little paranoid. I talk way too much. You know, I can be slightly cowardly, but when it counts, I'm there. You know, I hate to say it, but I probably am. If I had to pick a character, I'm probably C-3PO. Gary said I'm Island Hermit Luke. Well, Gary, we're doing original trilogy. Original trilogy. You got to pick a character. Because I'm kind of curious, but I think I'm probably, unfortunately, I'm probably C-3PO, which is funny because when I was a kid, If I had the choice of getting a toy, right, and one of them C3PO and the other's R2D2, I'm easily like, well, I want the R2D2. Like, nobody likes C3PO. Like, I mean, he's, in retrospect, he's a lot of the humor of the movie, but, it's like, yeah, that's just me being realistic. I'm probably C3PO. Let's see here. Landon said, "Are the perks of California worth the expense?" Well, yeah, it's the best state. Like, in my opinion, it's the best state in the country. California is beautiful. We generate, I think like the highest. I think the highest or the second highest revenue for the entire country because we have so much industry here. The cool thing about California is there's just everything. Like, meaning, depending on where you go in California, you could be in forest, you could be in desert, you could be in ocean, you can be in the mountains. It's like it's got everything for like just the sheer thing. And then the weather is fantastic. I'd say the one downside of California really is earthquakes. But I grew up here, so like earthquakes don't freak me out as much as other things. Like whenever I've been in other states and they're like, "Oh, there's like a tornado warning or something," I'm like, "Oh my gosh!" Like it scares the crap out of me. Which is funny because like an earthquake, I'm just like, "Nah, okay." But it's just like you kind of pick your natural disaster for whichever state you live in. But I guess if I had to, because I grew up in that, like it's just less freaky to me. But no, I'm very California proud. Like I love my state. Which makes me, 10 times more annoyed by the Dodgers losing the last like 4 games. Like, but yeah, I definitely have California pride. And it's a diverse state. We have some of the best food in the country. You know. Now, let me be honest and give you some negatives, right? I think that there is something really nice, like when I went to the Rock Hall of Fame, like I used to do stuff for them, like art for them. So when I was an art director, I used to fly up to Cleveland like once a year to just like go through the Rock Hall of Fame, talk to the buyer there, that kind of stuff. And there is something about the Midwest that really grew on me from those trips, where when I was, and keep in mind, like, I know there's a lot of haters of Cleveland and stuff, but personally, I just found it to be a really beautiful city. But one of the things that's really amazing about like Cleveland, Chicago, all those cities that are over by the Great Lakes, and then New York, like a lot of these like older states, there is something to be said for the buildings and the history. Because if you go to Los Angeles, it's like the city itself, which again, I'm very proud of LA and and all of that. But if you go to these cities, like even San Francisco, right, which has way more city history in the buildings and in, there's a lot more history, a lot more history in like the environment, right? California just doesn't feel as old of a city. And there is something really cool about like when you're, walking around Cleveland or whatever, like, and I'm just using Cleveland as an example because it's a place I went to a lot for those visits. But there was something really cool about, by the way, while we're here, this is one of the street lights that, the first street lights that like Edison installed in the United States. Or like walking by and there's a building that goes back to like the foundations of the country. Like no cities in California feel like, like Midwest cities that go back so far. I don't know if that makes sense. Like, cause everything's relatively new. Like one of our oldest cities is going to be, San Francisco. And even there, a lot of the buildings are fairly new, comparatively, right? Whereas if I go to like Chicago or whatever, there's like just history extending, so Illinois, like, to me has more, like, I'm just saying, like, one of the things I like about other cities, and other states is like sometimes there's just like some really rich and beautiful history that California, like, unfortunately, like a lot of our rich and beautiful history just doesn't exist anymore. We do have like the missions and stuff like that, but like we don't have that, like, I don't know, it's hard to explain, but it's like that feeling when you're in a city and you feel like hundreds of years like between buildings. Does that make sense? Landon said, what about the people out here in the desert? It's the wild, wild west. It kind of feels like everybody for themselves in a survival kind of way. And the nice people don't seem to have much in common with you. I will say I live in the desert in California, and there's definitely like that survival thing is just kind of a thing. Like, there's a lot of that out here. We're a pretty populated valley, but it's like, but I think the people of California tend to be pretty rad. But it's definitely not like when I was a kid and we first went to Boulder, Colorado, because I had relatives who lived in Boulder. It's not like that kind of people. Like, when we went to Boulder, I remember, we'd go to like a grocery store and they'd be like, "How are you?" And they weren't just saying it because they wanted to, like, "Oh, I'm good." They actually really wanted conversations. Like, everywhere you went, people would be like, "Oh, hi, are you new around here?" And like, they'd just talk to you. And like without an agenda or without anything, without wanting anything or trying to get something. And like, that is like a unique thing to like some areas of the Midwest. I don't think it's all of the areas. But or like a place like Boulder that's like a small kind of hunting kind of town. There is like more of a small town, like everybody's friends kind of vibe than I think you get in at least the areas of California that I've lived. However, we're definitely not like the short, New Yorker kind of attitude of, like straight to the point. Like, there are things at least in LA County that can get annoying. Like, you do have a lot of the, a lot of just, like pseudo actors, like all kind of, I don't know if that makes sense. There's different cultural stuff that can be annoying, but I'd say in general, I think I'm probably like a Cali guy for life. Like, I like California. I actually really like the school district that I teach for too. So I feel like in general, I think it's pretty good. But each area has like their own kind of strengths and stuff. I think it's just like, to me, California is kind of where it's at. The cost of living, though, I always make jokes that I make the jokes, but I make jokes sometimes that we should get like a discount in our mortgage or rent whenever the weather's weird. Because I do feel like most of what you're paying for with California is the weather. That's the key. That's the key out here is we're paying for the weather. So when the weather gets too like gloomy or weird or like too harsh, it's like, I do feel like maybe we could work something out with the state where we get like a substantial discount in our rent or mortgages. But yeah, one of the other nice things about California is just like everything's here. So like for careers and stuff, like there's you have access to everything. So like for me, even shifting careers wasn't that crazy. When I left being an art director, I was able to kind of bounce into a different career And there's just tons of, especially for art, like there's just tons of art careers out here. I know that's changing, and there's changing landscapes everywhere. But I remember when I lived in Portland, that wasn't the case. Even though it's a very creative city, they didn't have like, the film industry and the video game industry and all these different industries like at their doorstep. So if you were like out of luck on work, like you were just done. Whereas in California, it's like, at least, maybe with the advent of AI, this will change. But at least, for creatives, it's kind of a key place to be. But yeah, I'm probably biased. And, I think, at the end of the day, if I could, live in a nice area where I could just pay off the house and just not have to work and just work on comics and art all day, maybe I would consider a different state. But we got a really good deal on our place, and so that's another thing, is just like, we're very fortunate to have a house anywhere for what we got it for. So yeah. Jizdra, I cannot pronounce GZDR forever. Jim said it's a thing to rag on California, but I love it, and I'm grateful to be born and raised here. Jim said serial killers and earthquakes are my thing. No, I think I have California pride. Like, I can objectively say there are things wrong with California, but much like a lot of people who are raised in California, if I hear somebody else talk crap about California who's not from here, it's almost like I can talk bad about my brother, right? Because it's my brother, but don't you dare. Does that make sense? It's like I get very defensive of the state because it is such a good state. However, everybody in LA is going to complain about LA and stuff. But yeah, it's a great state. Dylan said Arizona is slowly becoming California and Hollywood 2.0. I will say this, Dylan. I would have never in my life thought that I would want to even think or entertain the idea of Arizona. And I don't mean that as a knock to Arizonans. I just, I had this vision in my head of what it was, and I didn't really know a lot of people who lived there, and I hadn't really been there except maybe on the way to, I saw the parts of the Grand Canyon that are in Arizona, but I hadn't really been in like Arizona proper. But then like getting to know Scott and Gary and just meeting all of these amazing creatives who live in Arizona, it's made me like realize like Arizona sounds amazing. Like it sounds really rad. And I will say Arizona sounds much more similar to where I live in California. Like there's a similar vibe. I feel like we're always kind of in a similar place. Cause it's kind of like desert rats. I don't know if that makes sense. Like I feel like desert people just have a certain vibe. We're like the sand people. Okay. And we know our own. So like Arizona sand people are going to be a little bit similar to California sand people. Our temperatures start getting up there. You guys might be more hardcore sand people because you're in the heat. Like our heat gets to, I think max is at like 115, I think is the worst it's been or something. You guys get worse. Gary was saying we move in single file to, but my point is I think Arizona sounds lovely, and from what I've heard about like the art community down there and stuff, it actually seems awesome. Like Arizona sounds great. I do like that in California, even at the peak of the heat, I can generally go outside without passing out. That's nice. I feel like in Arizona, there's definitely some days where I think just being outside could like literally kill you if you're out for too long. Correct me if I'm wrong, but yeah. Landon said it was fun talking, Josh. Nice. Oh, Landon's in Arizona too. Okay. Landon, I forgot that you're in Arizona as well. So that makes me think more highly of Arizona. Like, it just sounds like a good area. Gary said, yeah, Arizona's solid. He said, my biggest gripe is, yeah, for like 6 months of the year, you don't want to be outside. However, in reality, for about 6 months of the year, I'm not outside anyway. I'm a cartoonist. So maybe Arizona's like built for cartoonists, you know? But at least you're getting sunlight. You're not getting the you know, the real bad stuff, you know? Um like to me, the thing that's beautiful in my head, like again, being a guy who grew up in the desert, it was always my fantasy to live in like a London-ish environment where it's just constantly raining. Because anytime it would rain, it was like, this is amazing. I love the rain. And I still feel that to this day. Like, I enjoy when it rains. So I was thinking I'm just, like the Garbage song or something. I'm only happy when it rains, so I'll move to Portland. And then living in Portland 3/4 of the year raining, I very quickly learned, like, no, that is not me. I need my sun. I'm like, you know, even snow, it's like snow is really fun, but like a week and a half of snow, and then I'm kind of like, okay, I had my snow. That was nice. Let's go back. Um, Dylan said, for me, Gary, it's about 8 months out of the year that it's hot. Interesting. Yeah, like the funny thing is, Gary was mentioning this. There are like parts of Arizona that are like snowy, right? Because to me, like just the idea of snow in Arizona is like insane. But it's a big state, you know. But yeah, California is great. One of the fun things about California too is the history of California is pretty cool for like if you're into movies or entertainment and stuff. Like there's so much history here. However, I would say for like just I'm gonna admit something though. If I could deal with the weather, I would love to be able to live in like Chicago. If I could deal with the weather, because I do love that city. I think it's one of the most beautiful cities. But I just don't think I could hang with the weather. And I will say, from people I've met in the U.S., I feel like Chicago people are kind of my type of people. Now, I know that's kind of weird because it's like, it has a reputation for, being like a crime-riddled city and stuff. But it's like, I don't know. I really love the city of Chicago. And I love... like the people of Chicago. I like the people of Chicago. It's beautiful. They're wonderful people. Dylan said my mom almost died one summer due to our AC going out. Yeah, you won't believe this, but this is how much of a hero my wife is. When we first moved here, we were using a swamp cooler because we had no money and the AC didn't work in our house. So for like a good 6 to 7 years, we were just straight swamp cooling it. Now, the area we live in is one of the few areas where you can really use a swamp cooler effectively. The problem with a swamp cooler is, especially whenever there were fires in California, which in our area there's fires quite often. Not in my neck of the woods, but close enough to where whenever there are big fires, the smoke kind of blows over the valley. So imagine like smoke of a fire, and then think of how like lovely a wet cigarette would smell if you just had that smell blowing all throughout your house.
the fact that it costs too much and I shop.
And also, like, sometimes it gets to, like, heat, but it's a little more humid than regular, and then the, swamp cooler kind of doesn't cut it. And so, yeah, my wife is amazing for roughing it out with that for years. We finally got AC a couple years ago, and that's been a game changer. But talk about just a trooper. Like, my wife is a hardcore amazing person for dealing with that for so many years. It did save us money though. Our electric bill was like significantly lower when we had a swamp cooler, but I feel like if it's between your electric bill being less but you're unable to be productive at all because you're living in like a sauna, or just like biting the bullet and paying a little more for the electric bill, I think sometimes just the productivity return is worth it. I don't know if that makes sense. I'm kind of curious to hear what your favorite things about Arizona are. What are your favorite pluses about Arizona? Because it seems like I have all my Arizona peeps in the place. Okay. We're at the hour mark, guys. We're going to play a trailer. I'm going to play Jim Lujan's new trailer. And then I'll be right back. When I come back, we're going to finish coloring this page. And we shall do it well, and we shall do it justly. And there shall be much rejoicing. Okay, I'll be right back.
Well, Mr. Stryker, I have you now. There is no escape. You will tell me where the Kemble files are, or you will die beneath the crushing electric arms of my shoptopus.
I hear you chirping, little birdie, but JT Stryker ain't no stool pigeon.
Very well. You have left me no choice. Bring out the doctor. Say hello to Dr. Hodges. I'm sure you're familiar with the doctor and his work.
If by work you mean the murder and torture of innocents, yeah, I'm familiar.
I've waited a long time for this moment, Stryker. I'm going to enjoy every minute of it.
That's what your mother said.
Well, that's a horrible thing to say. You don't even know my mother.
Don't let him interrupt you. Come on, man.
Look, fellas, we can tango here all night, but it doesn't change a thing. You're never getting the Kemble files.
Oh, I beg to differ, Stryker. I have certain negotiation methods.
Your mom has negotiation methods.
Stop it. That didn't even make sense. That's not even... It's not applicable.
Listen up, compadres, and listen good. Option 1, I'm giving you 2 bozos and out. You untie me, I walk out of here, and everybody goes home happy. Option 2, I kill everyone in this room and then...
You idiot! You killed him!
I felt triggered. I've been learning to stand up to bullies. I just read 2 stories. Joshua Kemble's raw, introspective graphic novel chronicling mental health, faith, and the struggle for redemption. I also read Jacob's Apartment, a coming-of-age graphic novel about faith, love, and post-college existential drama. They've changed my life choices.
I'm sorry. I had no idea. I too am a fan of the books of the Joshua Kemble. But I'm still going to have to kill you.
Kill me with kindness?
Landon was saying I love the sunsets. And Landon was also saying winters are nice. Dude, speaking of sunsets, okay, so even like, so one of my favorite cities in California is Long Beach. It's just real close to my heart. A lot of good memories there. It's kind of where I met my wife. It's where I met a lot of my close friends. It's where I went to grad school and undergrad. Like, I just love Long Beach in general. I have a real soft spot in my heart for Long Beach. But I will say the one thing that I missed a lot, well, one of the things that I missed a lot being a person who grew up in the desert, you know, in at the very fringes of LA County, was at night. Like, you know, the sky was never like clear like it is in the Antelope Valley. In the Antelope Valley, it's like at night the sky is so clear. Some nights, especially if you drive out just a little bit toward like Kern County, right, where you look up out by like Rosamond and stuff. But even in my area, at night, I see like a clear view of the moon, and the stars are like usually very clear in this area to the point where sometimes you even see the swirls of the Milky Way. Like that's how clear it gets, like sky-wise. And then almost every morning in the Antelope Valley, there's a majestic sunrise. Like in fact, it happens so often. It's like majestic sunrises get kind of old, if they ever can. But it's just like you get these just beautiful, like pastel, crazy sunrises and sunsets. And that's something I really missed when I lived in Long Beach. Was like you just never saw the sky like that. Like the sky, you know, there was so much air pollution, which wouldn't even be obvious to like somebody local there. You know, you'd still have beautiful nights and stuff. And of course, like in Long Beach, you're right by the ocean, right? So you get these very pretty skies, but it's still never quite the same as like a desert sky. There is something just magnificent about the sky in the desert. And I will say, when I was in Arizona, because I had to fly out there, I think I've told you guys the story. At some point, I need to go out there and like visit Scott and Gary and stuff, because it's not like a crazy drive. That could be a fun little vacation just to like go up there and just visit for a little bit, maybe go out for a beer or something. It's how long of a drive is it? If Gary's still in chats, let me know how long of a drive it is from like where you are in Arizona to like California. It can't be that crazy. I think it's to an extent. Is it closer than Nevada, or is my brain blipping out? Maybe it's a step further, but I feel like it's even closer to where I'm at, because we're kind of where I live is like not very known in California, but anyone who's driven to Vegas from Los Angeles drives through the Antelope Valley almost every time, because we have like one of the main roads to Vegas, so it's not a very far drive. So yeah, it'd probably be like 5 hours or something. But yeah, at some point I need to go up to Arizona. I think I should probably sign up for one of the comic things there, and I probably will once this book's done. But even if it's just to visit, it would be fun. But yeah, I will say the few times I've been in Arizona and Nevada, they definitely rival and beat California skies quite often. I mean, like, you just can't, like, yeah, those skies are unbelievable. But for California, we get real clear skies in the Antelope Valley. In fact, near here, there's a couple weird things about the Antelope Valley, little facts. One of them is a lot of geological studies of how the fossil record works and carbon dating and stuff. They come from like right outside of like right up the 14, like kind of close to Palmdale, in an area called Acton, like right before you kind of hit Acton, like right between there. There's an area where they filmed all the a lot of the Star Trek episodes, early Star Trek episodes. So in this area called the Vasquez Rocks. And it's kind of wild because if you go to Vasquez Rocks, like, you'll instantly recognize like a million planets from the original Star Wars, or not Star Wars, Star Trek. Because they were filmed out there, right? Because it looks kind of like weird and Arizona-ish, like, but like the more wild areas of Arizona, it kind of has that kind of vibe, like really weird rock formations and stuff. But because of the rock formations and stuff, there's a lot of geological studies and stuff that have come from there, because we're also right next to, this is one of the downsides of where I live, is luckily this house isn't on a fault line. When I was a kid, they have the map of the San Andreas Fault, right? And the house I grew up on, like as a kid, if you looked at the fault line map, our house was built on a fault line. So it was like there's a fault line that ran through our house, which is kind of scary when it's an earthquake. We got like, you know, we've experienced a couple earthquakes here, but not like we did at that old house, you know. But because of those conditions and the clear skies and stuff, there's a lot of astronomy and stuff like that. However, I'd imagine like Arizona, probably that times 25, you know, 20 million or something. You know what I mean? Because yeah, Arizona has some of the most beautiful landscapes in the world. The parts of Arizona I'm less familiar with are like the parts that like I think there's like, aren't there like ski lodges or something? That's just a part of Arizona I never think about, you know? But I will say, the older I get, the more I think I like where I live. Like, you know, quite a lot. And I think that is an age thing because, like, where I live is really nice in the sense that I can park and drive places. The driving isn't like crazy stressful around town. I feel like if I lived in downtown LA, the driving would drive me. Eventually, the driving and the traffic jams and like the lack of parking everywhere and stuff would get really old. But I will say, you know, like LA's got all kinds of different. LA County has so many different kind of temperatures, you know. I used to work in San Fernando. San Fernando has its own thing. You know, it's right next to Sylmar. Sylmar has its own thing. You've got Glendale and like that whole area that has its own thing. Like each kind of section has their own thing. And I think that's the thing I like the most about Dylan said, I feel like having a building on a fault line should be illegal. Well, there was always a joke among the Antelope Valley folks that, you know, everybody in Los Angeles, you know, looks down on the Antelope Valley. But after the big earthquake, when the state, you know, breaks off and sinks into the ocean, we'll have oceanfront property. That was the joke around here, was that it's like, I forget, but like it, you know, when they've done like the statistics on like if the big one hits, like it does look like this will be beachfront. So if I just hang in there, guys, with my property, you know, we might be beachfront. I'm kind of joking because like obviously that if that happens, we're gonna have bigger issues than property. But yeah. Yeah, Landon was saying there's probably ski lodges up north. Yeah, I think that's what Gary was talking about a while ago, where he was talking about some of the kind of forest areas and stuff that people don't really think about when they think of Arizona. But yeah, I just, you know, I'm a California kid. The other thing, I'm going to do another brag about California real quick. The other thing that people in other states think about California that's completely wrong is there's a couple perceptions. One is that everybody's like surfing in California and they forget about like the forest. Like where we're going to do our art meetup is in like a big forest in a cabin, and you wouldn't think of like, oh, catching waves, bro. You know, like that's one thing. And then the other is, for some reason, we have a reputation of having horrible drivers in California. And I think you can only think that if you haven't lived here and then driven in other states. Because anytime I go to other states, I'm like, I will feel like nobody in California can drive. And then I go to places where people literally cannot, like they cannot drive at all. Perfect example. There's a Portlandia episode where it was so close to, it was just so funny because that came out like kind of towards the tail end of me living in Portland. And I remember when we moved to Portland, like one of the things that weirded us out is you're on a freeway, you're about to exit, and the cars like slow down in a way that almost causes an accident just to be polite and let you out. And they do the same thing when you're merging on. Like you try to merge on and they're like, no, you. And it like becomes dangerous because they're just like, and I'm sure things might have changed because this was like a decade or over a decade ago. But it's like at the time, like the drivers were just too nice. Like they were too friendly and it became dangerous. So I remember when Portlandia came out, there's this scene that's at a four-way stop on a road, and the cars keep inching forward because they're like, no, you go ahead, and they get in like a slow motion, polite car crash, because nobody will like just be like, okay, I'm taking the lead. But I will say from living in Portland, man, people in Oregon cannot drive, like for the life of them. And if you're from the LA area, like your life is driving. If you're from anywhere in LA County. And so just being in states where people are less equipped to drive, like, yeah, people are a little more rude in California. Like there's a couple things to know, especially if you're driving in LA County, not necessarily in my area, but if you go downtown, the law of LA is basically when you're driving, you're aggressive. That's it. Like you have to be an aggressive driver. You cannot be a passive, friendly driver and get anywhere in Los Angeles. Like if you're going to merge when you're downtown LA, you're going to start your merge before you blink. Because if you put your turn signal on, like no one will let you in. It's like that kind of environment. But there's other cities with really rude drivers. Like a good example is, like the drivers in New York are crazy rude. Like when I went up there, man, they're crazy in different ways, but and rude. But the problem is they're rude and crazy and aggressive, but they also have no idea how to drive. So they do weird things like they'll accelerate into a stop in New York. And I always find that weird. Like, why would you ever accelerate into why would you hit the gas right before you hit the brake? That just makes no sense. But they do it. It's like the way of the road in New York. New York's crazy on a different level where it's like you take the aggression of an LA driver and then you just make it so they can't drive. And that is that's a whole different thing. So here's what I'm saying. Los Angeles has the worst drivers in the world, except if you're driving anywhere else in the world. And then you realize they're actually the best. Like, because we're like a commuter city and we don't have like public transit, everybody in Los Angeles knows how to drive. Like you have to be pretty apt and good at driving to not get in like 5 billion accidents and not basically and not just stay where you're at and never drive. Like if you're going to drive in California, you have to really know how to drive. That I will say is pretty cool because I do think most states in reality, people will feel like, oh, we have better drivers and they're more polite than Los Angeles, and they have no idea how bad their driving is. And I've experienced that anywhere I've visited, where you're just like, what is with the drivers in other states? And I think it just comes down to like the cultural heritage of California is just that of really vast distances. Like we're a big state, and a lot of commuting. to get anywhere. Like, you just kind of, we're a car city. So like, yeah, anyhow, I would pretty much say we probably have like the best drivers on the planet. And I feel like that's a reputation of California that um that is unfairly cast on Californians, like that we're bad drivers, because we are bad drivers. Just, we're kind of like democracy. What is it that's said about democracy, where it's like it's the worst form of government other than all the other forms of government. Like, yeah, it's bad, but it's like the worst compared to all the other forms. Like, compared to all the other forms, it's the best one, but it's the worst, right? I think we're like that with driving in Los Angeles. So, Dylan said, I live close to a place where hot air balloons take off and land, and also we have a hot air balloon festival every year. That's awesome. I know out in Kern County, there's a little bit of hot air ballooning, but I can't imagine with the stretches of land that exist in, in your area that there wouldn't be. Have you ever been in a hot air balloon? I think I would never. I just I don't think I could do a hot air balloon. Because I don't have like crazy fear of heights, but when I was in when I went to TCAF, I went to the Calgary Tower or whatever, and it was like, it was beautiful, and you're so high up that the earth starts kind of like, you actually see the bend of the earth because you're like so high up that things don't look like, horizons don't look flat anymore, they bend a little bit. And I was okay up there with a solid floor and some food and stuff. It was very relaxing, but I have to admit, there's times like in a tall building or something like that, when you get close to the edge where that height just feels like unsafe and unsteady, and your stomach gives a little turn, like the top of a roller coaster, right? When you're looking down, it's like you get that little like kind of weird turn in your stomach. Thing that scares me about hot air balloons is just the exposure to all the elements. And I mean, really, I would imagine in this little basket thing, you would probably feel the height that you are. I think I would be. I think if I did do a hot air balloon, I would have to bring diapers. Does that make sense? Like, I don't know. But I'm not really like much of an extreme sports kind of person. I'm not like, opposed to trying things, but in general, I tend to try to avoid activities where if I died doing them, people would be like, well, that makes sense. And hot air balloons are like right up there, where I feel like if you go in a hot air balloon and there's a horrible accident and your friends are like, wow, how did he pass? And it's like, well, he was in a hot air balloon. They'd be like, oh, okay, yeah, that, like they might be sad and stuff like that, but they're like, well, I mean, you did get in a hot air balloon, so you know what I mean? I don't know if that makes sense. I try to avoid activities like that. I had an old coworker when I was an art director who had a story that was really funny, where his old art director was like really into, you guys will probably know what this is called. I can't even remember what the term is, but it was like a whole thing on YouTube where people would like jump from like, the roof of a building, and they act like Spider-Man, like they're like jumping around, and I think it's called parkour, right? Oh, Gary said, I've been in a hot air balloon. It's actually quite peaceful until the landing. What about the landing, Gary? You can't just leave the story there. You got to tell us about it. Now I'm curious. And also, is it terrifying? Like, did you look over the edge or just kind of stay in the center of the balloon, with your hands tightly gripped on something so you didn't, die? anyhow, so like one of my old coworkers, he had an art director who was like really obsessed with parkour and would always talk about it and stuff. And every time he'd talk about it, people would be like, "Aren't you kind of like worried that one day you're gonna like, miss your mark and like break, bones and stuff?" And he's like, "Nah, nah, nah, it's never happened." And then I think like he said, it was like the 5th year he had worked with this guy, and he was like, "I'm gonna go do parkour," and everybody's like, "Yeah, dude, you might like really injure yourself." And then he did parkour, and that time he did miss the ledge, and he like broke every bone in his body. And like he said, it was like really sad, but it's like one of those things where like everybody he worked with was like, "Well, yeah, I mean, it's like he does parkour, so." I don't know if that makes sense. That's the kind of activity I want to avoid in life. I don't think you can play it too safe. I mean, to counter the idea of like living super safe and risk free, you can kind of go out anyway, right? There's no way to kind of like bulletproof your life to the point where it's like, you're gonna avoid the big end. But I do feel like there's ways to just kind of, like if you're skydiving, like I don't know, I don't think I want to skydive. I don't want to, I'd rather the way I go out to be kind of natural or tragic. I don't want it to be, well, I mean, you were skydiving, like the rich people in a submarine or whatever. I don't want to do that. Although I will say we did the submarine ride one time when my wife and I were first dating. We did a trip to actually with her sister who lives with us too. But it was a trip to Catalina, and there were like these yellow submarines, and so we're like, we're gonna go on the yellow submarine, and we're all excited. We're on the yellow submarines, and we're like singing "We All Live in a Yellow Submarine." We're all excited about it, and then the ride starts, and it goes about a foot underwater, and it's like the most boring thing ever. You just and keep in mind, in Catalina, the water is usually like crystal clear. Like it is like one of those areas in the world where the water is just nuts, like how clear it is. And yet, like on this thing, all you see is just this fuzzy water, and they had like a fish feeder thing that where it's like a little gun that you can like put quarters in or whatever and shoot fish food out to like try to draw fish to like your little portal in there. The worst ride, it was like really expensive, and all of us were like basically like swore to after that day that anyone who was going to go to Catalina, we just warned them, do not go on the yellow submarines. It's a ripoff. Because you just went in and you felt like, claustrophobic because it's just like really contained. But it was like less entertaining than the submarine ride at Disneyland, which I don't even know if that ride exists anymore, but that was like the best ride at Disneyland. I loved the submarine ride. Did any of you guys have the luck of seeing the submarine ride back when you'd go and there was a diver and there was a giant octopus? And it was like, there were mermaids, and it was very like 1950s, 1960s, like underwater world kind of thing. Those were the days, guys. We're getting closer. We're getting closer to done on this project. Dylan said, boo. He said, I don't think I do well with the swaying. The day we went on the Dolly Steamboat ride, my stomach felt off. Gary said the submarine ride was rad. Yeah, it was like the best. I feel like that and the Tiki Room are like the unsung heroes of Disneyland. And if I ever have like $1,000 that I can just blow, then maybe I'll go back. Disneyland's way too expensive. But yeah, I mean, maybe someday, right? Okay, I'm gonna have to quit out of this, or let's see if quitting some of these will help. I have like an ancient Mac. It was very nice, and then the last like Adobe upgrade, it's like it's using too much memory kind of thing. Yeah, Jim was saying the original version of the submarine ride at Disneyland was magical. Yeah, it was. It was like just like a time capsule in a really cool way. I feel that same way about the Tiki Room. I think the Tiki Room is just one of the best things at Disneyland because it's like a snapshot. One of the things I wish they still had is they had a ride called Mission to Mars, and you'd go in like an old school rocket ship and then travel to Mars. And it was amazing. It was the coolest thing. And then they got rid of that too. But I like those like retro rides, you know, where it's like the mid-century, and you were able to kind of check out the mid-century stuff. The sky buckets were cool like that too. They were like these buckets you'd get into and you know, traverse across the park. But anyhow, we're just getting this this hair here, and I'm trying to avoid the constant warning that's coming up. That's like I'm running out of memory. You guys probably can't see that on the screen. So what I'm going to try to do is finish my selection of the hair, and then I'll probably just close out of Photoshop and then open it up again. But let's see if we can quit out of some things that are open that I don't need open, and maybe that'll help too. Perfect. Okay. Dylan said, I've been to California twice, visiting San Diego. San Diego is a great city. I'm a little jealous of... am I crazy? I feel like Scott Lost lives near San Diego. It'd be fun to go hang in San Diego with Scott Lost. I haven't been to San Diego in years. I used to go to Comic-Con a lot, just attending it. Especially when I got my first job in illustration. And I remember... You know, a couple years before that, going to San Diego Comic-Con, and it cost, you know, like a fortune for the tickets and stuff. And then I remember my first illustration job in-house. The guys were like, are you going to San Diego Comic-Con? And I was like, yeah, I just don't have the money for the tickets. And they were like, oh, you know, tickets are free. You're a pro. And I was like, what? And like, so I remember for a couple years after that, I went to like every San Diego Comic-Con. We'd get our pro badges, you know, and then just kind of meander around and like hang out. There's like an Irish bar, Irish pub that's like one of those old Irish pubs, like that's a walk's distance from the con, and it was always exciting and fun to go there because you'd run into all sorts of industry professionals, and also they had just really good drinks and stuff. That was always a fun time. I have never boothed at San Diego, and that would be amazing. I do have a couple friends who did. Finally, like it's funny. It's like when I first started, that was like nobody I knew was at San Diego, and now like almost everyone I know is like has boothed there. And everyone I know who's boothed there usually makes like a killer profit, you know, from boothing because it's the biggest. I think it's the biggest convention in the world. But I haven't been in a long time. I do remember the last time I went. This is before I was boothing. It was a con where I was passing out copies of my comics. So it must have been back in like 2005. So it's been a long time, like 30 years or something. No. I went after that. But it's been probably like 20 years. Something. Not 30 years, like 20 years or 15 years, somewhere around there. Dylan was saying, I saw an Instagram reel this morning of a guy talking about Fantastic Four first steps and its retro-futuristic inspiration, and I was immediately giddy. I love retrofuturism, atomic age, space age design. Yeah, I'm kind of curious about it. My only problem with the Fantastic Four thing is just like I've been experiencing, superhero burnout. Like, just too many superhero movies. Yeah. But anyhow, last time I went to San Diego Comic-Con was really fun though. But I remember this is a thing that's interesting. I get a little bit of anxiety in crowds. And the last time I went to San Diego Comic-Con, it was like so packed, it was like uncomfortable. And the thing that's nice about like boothing at a convention is you have like a booth you can kind of go behind. So a packed con is great news if you're like behind a table. But if you're an attendee, and you're a person who like gets kind of like just almost like panicky in crowds, like that was a little much for me. And it's not like we're not talking like baseball game crowd. We're talking like, you are just squished like a sardine can in a convention area. And I remember that being really uncomfortable, which made me think I may not even be able to do conventions like from that one time. But then I remember starting to booth at more and more conventions, realizing because of the booth, like if you start feeling like overloaded with the crowd, like you have a booth to kind of go to, and it's really chill. It's a lot different behind a booth. Jim said, did we ever run into each other at San Diego Comic-Con? He said, I used to booth with Jose Cabrera. I don't think so. No. But my Photoshop just froze, so I'm hoping I can save what I've got. I don't think I can, so I have to like force quit out of Photoshop, and hopefully I don't have to redo too much of it. Hopefully. Well, let's see. Let's see if it'll boot. Okay, we're just gonna force quit and see what happens. Hopefully I saved a lot of the colors I was doing. Did you like boothing at San Diego Comic-Con, Jim? Because I'm guessing that must have been the time where you had the DVD collection, right? Because I know Jim had a whole DVD collection back in the day. Dylan said, hopefully I can visit California this year. My aunt said that she would love to take me on vacation to California and live with her for a while on vacation. Nice. Does your aunt live Southern California, Northern California? I will tell you guys this. One of the most beautiful stretches of California is Monterey. Have you guys ever been to Monterey? Like, I'm a sucker for that whole area of California, like Monterey, Cannery Row, like that whole, just the vibe of that area is beautiful. The oceans in that area are amazing too. And probably the best aquarium you can go to in California is the Monterey Bay Aquarium, which I used to have to make stuff for. Jim said boothing was fun because Jose and Lonnie, but my DVD never really sold. I screened Revengeance producer. Yeah. Jim was saying that like San Diego kind of led to like the Revengeance thing, right? Dylan said she lives in Banning. Banning sounds familiar, but I'm not as familiar as I should be. Banning, California. Oh, okay, it's close to Riverside. Okay. Okay, that's a nice area. That's kind of woodsy. There's a joke about Riverside. Like, So as much as I like California, um, when I used to play in bands, Riverside would have a lot of venues and gigs, but anytime you'd go up there, it felt like you were walking into like a Insane Clown Posse kind of concert. Like the type of at least at the time, the type of folks you would meet in Riverside tended to be like into like new metal rap, and a lot of ICP folk. So anyhow, that's I'm just admitting my bias about Riverside, where anytime I think about Riverside, I think of the weird bars we used to play out there. There was a YMCA there that used to a friend of ours worked at, so he'd book gigs there. And man, I mean there's a lot of very interesting characters. Jim Lujan has a cartoon called Mama, I'm a Thug, and I feel like that feels like Orange County or Riverside to me. Like certain areas of Orange County, certain areas of Riverside. That cartoon just reminds me of. I don't know, like, so I can't open, like right now I've had to force quit Photoshop and it's like freezing up. I'm hoping I can finish what I was working on, you know? It's like pinwheeling of death right now. Dylan said, my mom's family grew up in Riverside in the 60s. And then Gary said one of the Zodiac murders was there. By the way, that movie, Zodiac, is so good. That's a fair point. Jim said, are you familiar with Holt Avenue in Pomona? I'm just checking. And he said, if you're familiar with it, then you're in trouble with your wife. That's funny. Okay, I'm gonna try force quitting again. Man, today is just not my day for computer stuff. It's probably just been on for too long. Okay. I'm gonna try to see if this will work. Let's see if we can get this running one more time. Okay. What do we got? Gary said Zodiac is probably a top 10 movie for me. There's something that is really great about now I'm blanking out on his name, the director, David Fincher. There's something really great about the tone of his movies. Like A Fight Club is one of my favorite movies. In retrospect, it's funny. Okay, here's something I was thinking about recently, where I feel like Fight Club was definitely of its time, because a lot of what the character was like, lamenting about was like, I have a life where I make good money and I have like everything kind of set for me, but I need more. Like, I don't know if that makes sense. It was kind of like almost like it's almost like thinking about the red pill. Man, my computer's not, like, Photoshop is not opening for me. This is really weird. Okay. Force quitting Photoshop, maybe that'll work. I'm just trying to see if I can do this without restarting my computer, since we're on a stream, you know? Okay. What do we have here? We have page 157. And it's saying you can't open Photoshop because it's not responding. How obnoxious is that? I'm just trying other methods. We might have to call it a stream, guys. That would be kind of lame if it's just because my computer's old. Let's see if like opening a different page will work. Hey, that might have worked. Jim was saying Arizona's Mexican food rivals Southern California's. I want to see it. I want to go visit Gary and have Gary prove my theory on Arizona Mexican food. Because when I was up there, I remember, this was like at the time the buyer for Fender. But we were doing like little guitar magnets and stuff for Fender. So we had to visit up there. And when I went up there, the buyer, we went out to lunch. And when you're working as an art director, a lot of the time you're like whining and dining people. So we were like, wherever you want to eat, we'll cover it. And she was like, she's like, you guys are from California, so I'm going to take you to our best Mexican restaurant. And this was in like Phoenix, and I'm like, okay. So she takes us to this place. They have like a mister outside. I think I've told this story before because the funny thing to me was like, I was like, how charming. They have a mister, and she was like, no, like those are everywhere because if you don't have a mister on the patio, people will they'll die. Like, anyhow, we had the food, and it was just like this. It was just like not. I mean, again, this might have just been the taste of that buyer. I could imagine I could probably end up doing that where I'm like, this is the best Mexican food place in, all of California, and it's not, so there's always that as an option. But I will tell you, I was like very unimpressed where I was like, man, you guys just got nothing on California, especially San Diego. Like San Diego has like the best, but, oh, Jim said Arizona's secret is they use lard for real and Sonora style tortillas. Okay. Gary said, do you remember the name? No, but I remember it was like some weird like fusion place. It was like white people, like white-ized Mexican food. Like it very much felt like, a fusion joint. And it wasn't too far from Fender, so I could probably find out what it is because it was pretty close to the to Fender itself. Which, by the way, Gary, have you been to Fender? Because you can go there. Like, you can schedule a visit. They have a museum and a museum shop like in the Fender corporate. And it's a cool building. It has like a giant guitar and stuff like that. It's definitely one of those places you should definitely go while you're whilst in Arizona. But I remember so a couple things struck me about Arizona that I still find really weird. One of the weirdest things about Arizona to me was like how wide everything is. Like I always imagine, and I think this was in Phoenix, so it's like, it was weird to me to be in a giant city, but everything was like really like far apart. Like there's a lot of land between buildings and stuff. It's not like a strolling area. Like that to me was weird because it's one of the first like big cities I've been to that was like that, where it, like there was just a lot of land between things, Jim was saying Josh is talking about Chipotle. Well, it wasn't Chipotle, but it was like one of those places that just everything looked really fancy. It was like a really high fancy dining establishment, because back in the day when we used to do that with clients, like we would take them to like, the steakhouse that had like the aged steak and stuff, because again, you're wining and dining a client, and our company would cover it because, when people are well fed and have a lot of drinks and they're making orders, they're going to usually order a lot more stuff than if they're, hungry or like displeased with their food. Nice. Landon said, I gotta eat dinner now and walk my dog. Peace out. Thanks, Landon. Thanks for stopping by. I appreciate it. All right, I'm gonna try. I promise the next time I'm in Arizona, uh, Gary, you can blow me away with some of the delicious Arizona Mexican food. I'm convinced because I'm guessing, like, I know Lujan knows his stuff with that. Like, Jim's taken me to a couple places where I was like, ooh, this is delicious. So if Jim says it's good, I'm believing him. But I would like to, it's kind of a fun thing as a challenge where it's like I would like to challenge you to prove me that the Mexican food is not bad and also cover the bill. That's I'm just kidding. It's really just my long con to try to get free Mexican food that's delicious. Jim said jumping off. I'll catch you later.
We've eliminated our targets. Now we go back home. Wait, we need the dead one too. Just come.
But I will say, Gary, especially if you ever go to San Diego Comic-Con, like San Diego Mexican food is like it's very good, and also SoCal Mexican food is very delicious. And the problem is it's kind of one of those things where it's all so good, it's hard to like even pick which place would be representative of it because it's just all so good. Like out here in the valley, there's a place called Azteca, and it's like you drive out to like Kern. There's two Aztecas. There's the one on Lancaster Boulevard that's like meh, like it's good, and then there's like the super authentic, amazing Mexican joint called Azteca that's like out in like Kern, and it's a bit of a drive. You like end up in the desert in this like area where there's like this what looks like a kind of rundown like liquor store, and then you go in it and it's like it looks like a dive bar, but they have like the best Mexican food in the valley. And you can tell because it's one of those places that like is out in the middle of nowhere, and there's like it's packed. It's just people know. But yeah, there. So that's near me, but there's just like there's so many options. It's hard to kind of pick. But I am kind of curious about Arizona Mexican food. Because again, my first impressions were not high on the list. It was it tasted kind of like Portland Mexican food, which is not all that great. I will tell you, I'd have to ask Kevin because he'd probably remember this place. But back when we did Big Illustration Party Time, one of the foods I miss in Portland, there was a place that would deliver breakfast burrito pizza, and it was like a breakfast pizza. It was like the most delicious thing ever. It had like omelet stuff on it, and like it was really good. There's like just little funny food memories of places I lived in Long Beach. I'm sure this place still exists. If Chris was listening to this, he'd probably be able to tell me what it is. But when I was in grad school, we got really obsessed with a pizza joint that was open super late, which is really important if you're in art school. They do deliveries like at ungodly hours, but they had a Thai pizza. It was like it was delicious. It was like the best thing ever. And I think they're still around, but they were like notorious for their Thai pizza and the fact that you could order it like 2 a.m. My wife and I probably had like way too many of those. I can't remember the name of that pizza place either. All right, guys. We're getting closer. We have one panel left. Well, a little bit panel left, but we're getting closer. So it's looking like probably like another half hour, and then we'll be done with the page. I do want to say, I really appreciate the chats today. It's been fun with all the entertaining things occurring. I could probably go for another cup of coffee pretty soon. So I might play us a break in a second. Which is great because that gives more airtime to Luhan's amazing cartoon. I might play that sneak peek of the music that I recorded this morning again too. Let me know in the chats though, because if you guys were already on the stream, this morning and wouldn't want to hear it, just let me know, because you might be like, yeah, I heard the music. Dylan said, have you ever had cactus candy? Yeah, dude. So here's the thing. When I was a kid, when I was in kindergarten, I actually lived in Texas for a hot minute. Like, I was in Texas for a couple years. I think from age 3 to age 6, I lived in Texas. And one of the first things I had in Texas was cactus candy, because we lived in Fort Worth. And I will tell you, Texas, man, has, like, I was real young, but I will tell you, man, Texas has some severely good Mexican food. And it's like Tex-Mex, so it's its own kind of flavor. But it's so good. So good. And then also Texas barbecue. I remember going to, they used to have these, like almost like a dinner and barbecue kind of show type thing that we went to as a kid. There's a lot of places that are interesting in Texas. There's a place we used to go on like fun family nights called Casa Bonita. And it was like, it was awesome. It was one of the first restaurants I went to as a kid that had like a fake outdoors. There were like caves and stuff for kids to like go through, and they had like an area where they'd have like magic shows and stuff. It was like a whole thing. I think I looked it up too, and I think it still exists. I think Casa Bonita is still around. But yeah, cactus candy was for sure a thing. Oh, nice! I didn't know that. Dylan said it's an Arizona-based business. Cactus candy. Nice. I didn't know that. See, I'm learning new things today. All right, we're getting there, guys. I'm going to go ahead and save, and then we're going to do this last panel. The last panel. Oh, Dylan said let's hear the music. He missed it. Okay, I'm going to play, I'll play the song I recorded today again. Let's play it. So this is the track that I recorded. There's no vocals for it yet. This is just the music I laid down this morning. Here it is. right, so that was the song I tracked this morning. It's a little riffy and jammy, but I think it could be fun. Gary was saying his some of his favorite places are Blue Adobe Grill, Los Dos Molinos, and both are in Mesa, Arizona. Nice. Carlsbad Tavern in Scottsdale is very good too. It's awesome. Yeah, I'm actually liking more and more the idea of like a road trip to Arizona would be fun. Maybe stopping by there before. I feel like that's kind of on the way to Utah. All right, we're getting the clothes drawn. And getting these areas deselected. I do feel like you know, I know it's silly to say. Somebody was asking a couple days ago about like the most cliche thing you've heard in art. This might have been in like our group chat or something, but the question was like, I think it might have been Scott Lost who asked this, but he was saying like, what's the most kind of cliche thing? Some of the most cliche things you've heard about art that are like completely true, and one of the cliches that I've found really true is I've almost thought about. Tell me what you guys think about this in chat, because this might be kind of dumb. I feel like a good way to start an art class might actually be reading the story of the tortoise and the hare. Weirdly enough, like I feel like that fable is like so true to a lot. At least it addresses a lot of problems I've seen in art where, you know, a lot of people will come out, they'll burn real bright, and then they'll just kind of burn out like real quick. And you see that a lot in the arts where you have people who come, they burn out, and they're just hitting the pavement like hard, like they're the next hot thing, and like they're gonna revolutionize the comic world and stuff. And they'll come and then they burn out real quick. And in the meantime, you have a lot of these old tortoises just kind of doing their thing, and staying at it and ending up winning the race. Like weirdly enough, that's been my experience of art is, you know, staying at it for a really long time, just kind of continually making the thing. And then I think there's something Luhan mentioned a long time ago. It's like after, you know, I finally started getting some like publications, you know, putting out my graphic novels and stuff where it's like there's this magic that happens, and I'm going to paraphrase it. I forget how Jim put it, but it's like, it's kind of amazing how the one consistent thing is just doing the thing and just making the thing and just kind of keeping your head down and making the thing. And then stuff just kind of happens. Where I think when you're out there, like trying to force it to happen, it's kind of like dating in a weird way where, you know, how people will say like, you'll find someone when you're not looking kind of thing. It's a very kind of similar thing with art where I think sometimes if you hit it too hard and you're too desperate for like instant gratification or instant success or instant publication or somebody to instantly bankroll your crazy idea, you know, you'll end up kind of burning out pretty quick. But weirdly, if you just kind of stay true, this is like almost like a woo-woo kind of thing, but I do feel like if you stay true to the vision of what you're trying to do and you put in the time and make it happen, eventually, not always, but eventually, generally, things are going to fall into place much better than if you didn't do the work and you're just kind of waiting to like push it through. I don't know if that makes sense. So anyhow, I feel like the tortoise and the hare, like I've literally thought about this, but I felt like it might kind of come across as like demeaning at the beginning of a high school art curriculum to be like, guys, we're going to read the tortoise and the hare. But I do kind of think that story is just like out of all the kind of truisms and stuff, at least in regards to art, And especially comics. I feel like that's just like 100% been my experience. Dylan said Master Taco makes their own horchata. Oh, I love horchata. All right, we're getting there, guys. But anyhow, I've even thought about like reading that on a stream or something. You know, I think people don't pay enough attention to that story, as cheesy as it is. I do think the slow and steady thing is a good thing, because I do think when you're trying something ambitious, it's just like the hot shot. You know, it's kind of like I think of it like you know, like a seasoned boxer, right? You know, when Muhammad Ali came up with the rope-a-dope, right, in boxing, it was like a revolution, but it also matches a lot of life where a seasoned guy in the ring, like keep in mind, I am not at all a boxer, so I would be out. I'd be gassed in like the first, you know, round of boxing. And so that's where I'd get knocked out, you know. I have nowhere near the cardio to kind of do that. But a seasoned boxer, you know, if you get a young kid in a boxing ring, right? A lot of the trick would be to just take hits. Like a lot of the trick to kind of defeating like a young up and coming or like, you know, boxer who's just full of a lot of energy is just to kind of take hits, but take them in a way where you're taking a lot of hits that don't do a lot of damage, but you're draining the other boxer of their energy, right? So they just go wild, like, you know, just railing hit after hit. And it's like you've positioned your hands and your arms and stuff in a way, or like in the case of Ali's rope-a-dope, right? You're leaning against the ropes. So the ropes are taking most of the impact of the hit. And meanwhile, that boxer feeling like they're winning, right? So they start getting cocky and getting, you know, more and more, you know, bold and unwise with the amount of energy they're expending, right? So you just let them blow out their energy, and then it's like, you know, then you come in and like bring the energy that you've retained that entire time, right? While the other person's just gassing out. I think that's just the case in a lot of things in life, like where you got to just kind of keep your nose to the grindstone, you know, and like weirdly things happen. A lot of things happen that people think you have to be out there like just swinging every punch, you know, and sometimes it's just about tactically carving away at the thing, so that when the right moment comes, you have like plenty of capacity to like, you know, make your hit or whatever. That's kind of my analogy. Now, I'm like way too old to ever, you know, like step foot in a boxing ring or anything, but I do always find it fascinating to hear boxers talk about it or watch people train. I saw a video a little bit ago where somebody was going to be in their first boxing match, and they just showed them a specific guard that you can do on your chest during a boxing match. And basically all it does is like, it pretty much protects you from taking any damage at all. But it makes the person who's like throwing the punch really feel like they're like beating you up, you know? And if you hold that, you know, and can retain it and let them just kind of gas out, then do some like real damage. You know, it's interesting to me. The tactics there match the same kind of thing where it's like slow and steady, you know, can be a tactic. Now I'm sure there's like, you know, it's again, I'm not a boxer, so I don't know, you know, I'm sure with raw fury, somebody could really do a lot of damage, but my point is just, I think that in general, if we're talking, if, you know, if that question came up, like, and I'm curious what your guys's answer to that to would be, like, what do you think is the most cliche thing you've heard, you know, piece of advice, but that would be really true for, you know, your journey in art, you know? And I definitely find that to be the case where you just kind of have to stay steady and just kind of keep making and you know, I used to always like quoting Bob Dylan, where you just say, you know, F 'em, play it louder, you know. um, but I do think there's something to that, like just kind of like, okay, play your music, you know, make your art, you know, and eventually you'll catch up, and then the world will catch up. You know, um, it's not a given, but it's like it's definitely a recipe that I think a lot of artists have followed that's kind of worked out for them. Dylan was saying the trapdoor spider waits do not be the cheetah. I like that. That's a pretty good one. Yeah, it's interesting how some of those truisms have, you know, some validity, right? All right. Oh, I made a mistake. Okay. There we go. There's a couple things I want to do. One is I want to get this last little bit that's behind him. Should be there. Oh, here we go. Wait a minute. We're almost done with this panel, guys. We're basically flat coloring, right? So what I'm doing is underneath the line art, I'm doing flat shapes of color. That's what it looks like, right? And I'm doing selections, and then I'll fill them with color. Just for anybody who might be curious, like what I'm doing. And that in comics is called flatting. Okay, here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna close this part, take this part of blue out, and then here I'm gonna take this part of blue out, and then we'll kind of see where we end up. And we should be good to go. Okay, Ben, what's up? Ben? All right. I was just checking in to see if my son was okay. All right. So we have this done. We actually have finished the page, you guys.
Oh, and by the way, I'm not okay right now. I just don't want to talk about this.
Okay. Well, we'll talk about it in a bit. Okay, dude.
I don't want to talk about it at all.
All right. So just making sure everything's good. So, okay, we are done with the page. I just realized, is this not refreshing? That's kind of wild. It doesn't look like it's refreshing. Let me see if, I don't know if you guys have been seeing what I've been working on because it's been all laggy. So there's the finished page, right? We finished it up. I'm going to save. I'm going to print this, and we're going to call it for the stream. Dylan had a really good question. He said, have you ever been to a drive-in movie theater? We have the Westgate Drive-In Movie Theater. They do farmers markets during the weekend, I believe. That's cool. I went to one a long time ago. That was really fun when I was younger. But I haven't been in a long time. It'd be fun to go. All right, guys. That's going to do it for our stream. Thanks for keeping me company and hanging out. We've finished our page. And with that being said, make sure you subscribe. You hit the bell so you get notifications when I'm about to go live. and we'll be probably doing more live streams, in like I'd imagine like tomorrow, just to kind of work on more pages. Thank you guys for choosing to spend your time with me. Make sure you hit the bell, you hit the like button, and let that algorithm know to kind of for people to check this out. Thanks for keeping me company. I hope you guys had a productive time and have a good Saturday night. All right, bye.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's get ready to crumble!
I'm Joshua Kemble, and welcome to Joshua Kemble's live stream. I've been a freelance illustrator and graphic designer for over 20 years. I was an art director for 9 years. And when I'm not art directing and working on illustrations and graphic designs, I'm working on comic books and graphic novels, and that's usually what I do during my streams. And while conversations can go all over the place on this stream, from spicy and entertaining to goofy and silly, one thing stays consistent throughout every stream. I'll always be working on art. So pull up a chair, get your art supplies out, and get ready for an entertaining show that'll keep you company while you work on your own personal art projects. This is Joshua Kemble's Art Stream.